Thanks for joining me on episode 923 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Jeff Wald. I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to focus on how your work impacts the world is key, and one way to be inspired. To do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Mader.
Why are we feeling like things are out of our control? Why are we feeling like things are not going the way that we want them to? Because then, when we really identify the sources behind that feeling, we can begin to bring alignment and bring integration into our life that causes us to feel more in control and more balanced in all areas of our life. Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world. In today's episode about investing in others by stewarding your time, I talk with you about why work-life balance isn't about same or equal time. I talk about why generally work-life balance issues are really about communication or self-awareness. And I also share why recognizing this can actually help you begin to fix it. As we talk about stewarding your time, wouldn't it be great if you could support this podcast and do it without just taking too long? Turns out you can. All you have to do is use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon when you're ready to make a purchase via Amazon, and a small commission will come back to support the show just that quick. If you enjoy the show when you are ready to buy from Amazon, just use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon. On Monday, Sharon and I talked a little bit about work-life balance, and I've talked about it before on the show. But this is one of those areas that comes up time and time again for people as an area of frustration. This feeling that they don't have control over their work and their life. They don't have balance between what they do for work and what they do for the rest of their life. And I think one of the reasons that people get frustrated about this is because we tend to think of balance as equality. And Sharon talked about this on Monday, how work-life balance doesn't mean everything's equal. It doesn't mean everything's the same. It doesn't mean that in a given day you spend a certain number of hours on work and a certain number of hours on home life, and those being equal matters and makes it right or wrong. Instead, it's really about feeling that you've got some sense of autonomy, that you've got some sense of control, and that there's an integration and that there's a development where your work and your life fit together. It doesn't feel like you have two separate lives. One of the things that I see when people are thinking about getting tasks done is oftentimes we create multiple lists. We create a list for our personal life. We create a list for our work life. We create a list for something else. And yet the truth is, in the right balance, in a good world, you only have one life. There's one of you with one life. How can we have separation and equality if there's only one of us? This is why integration, this is why understanding that you have alignment between who you are and the different components of your life becomes so important. And that's why oftentimes when we have frustration around our, quote, work-life balance, it's really more around the way that we communicate with others and around the way that we have self-awareness of our own life. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk a little bit about internal and external locus of control, and this is one of the components that can actually cause us to struggle in this work-life balance. The truth is that when we have self-awareness of who we are and what we should do, And we can begin to communicate that to others and to ourselves and to those that we're in relationship with, both at work and at home. Then we begin to feel more in control. We begin to feel more in alignment, and we begin to feel more like we have some degree of work-life balance. It's not just about being able to take off whenever you want or do whatever you want. It's not just about freedom to control your own time, though that can be part of it. It's also about feeling like you've got some sort of input into it. You've got some sort of control into it. This is why this helps us so much when we're talking about ourselves and about others. Recognizing when we have that sense of self-awareness and that sense of communication, recognizing that we can ask questions around this can help us begin to develop a sense of control. And when others around us are struggling with either the work-life balance that we have or the work-life balance that they have, asking good questions about what's really going on can help them develop a sense of control. This is about not just investing in yourself, but investing in others. It's about learning to help other people also balance what's going on in their work and in their life. But balance here, remember, doesn't mean equal time. Balance here does not mean that everything stays the same. In fact, there will be constant change. That is one thing that is pretty much a guarantee in the world. Nothing ever stays exactly the same forever. It can't. The world is constantly changing. But it is about having some sense of awareness of where you fit in to that world. What do you have control of? What do you not have control of? And why does that matter? And then for others, it's about asking them the questions that help them become aware of what do they have control of and what do they not have control of and why that matters. Because the truth is that at all times we have that one life. If we're not communicating with others about where we fit and how we feel and what's going on in our own heads and in our hearts and in our minds, then how do we expect others to actually be able to work with us and work around us as well? And if we're not aware of how we're feeling and why we're feeling that way, then how can we begin to work to adapt that, to change that? How can we begin to make changes in our attitude and our actions that improve the situation? This is why I say that usually when you think there's a work-life balance problem, it boils down typically to being in one of two areas, communication or self-awareness, because those two areas become the ones that cause us to actually have to deal with our work-life balance. Those are the ones that have us working to struggle and to fit in and to figure out what is it that we really are feeling? Why are we feeling like things are out of our control? Why are we feeling like things are not going the way that we want them to? Because then when we really identify the sources behind that feeling, we can begin to bring alignment and bring integration into our life that causes us to feel more in control and more balanced in all areas of our life. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of time, be sure to sign up for our Stewardship of Time Tips series by going to inspiredstewardship.com/time or texting 44222 Time Tips, and that'll get you our best tips on stewarding your time. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.